All right, let's get a specialist on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Slumpbuster. Quiet on the set, make sure my mic is on. Aris, Dre, and Juju Dog diving towards the pylon. Go for 2, so damn rude, recognize authority. Spitting tips for fantasy, no way you're outscoring me. Bold predictions with conviction every single day. Sports addiction, no restriction, kicking game like Pele. He's the greatest, what's the basis? Pick an athlete, let's debate this game. Outrageous trading places, sudden death, take 10 paces. Turn and shoot, boys the truth, Mamba mentality. Future greats take their place, dreams become reality. Low and outside, knocked it out the park. Your boy discovered fire like a rock with a spark. Refs acting like Neanderthals, phantom flags, nothing calls. Heartbreak losses, tragic falls. Every week discuss it all. Settle in, listen up. Free your time like Andrew Luck. Show's about to start. I suggest you buckle up.
Specialist. All righty, guys. We are back with episode 21. We can finally drink as an episode. We just had the 50th on our general sports show, and now we can drink on this sports show, so I am super happy. Today we're going to be breaking down tight ends, defenses, and getting into kickers because kickers are awesome. 4th down army all the way. Don't listen to anything my guest has to say because he is anti-kicker. We'll get into that here in a little bit. But we have the Wire FFB here with us. Tim, how are you doing today, bud?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing all right. So let's just go ahead and get to know you a little bit. How'd you guys come up with the podcast? Let us know about you guys for a second.
Well, you can find us on any streaming platform as well as pretty much any social media platform. We're the Wire FFB or Fantasy Football. We've been doing it for a little under a year now. We're just 2 childhood best friends who've known each other for over 20 years. So we started about midway through the season last year. Things kind of started. We started releasing some episodes, and then things just started progressively getting better. And we're very knowledgeable football guys. We've played for a long time. We've been covering it for a long time, and we've been very successful fantasy people. So we actually joined as a guest on another podcast. Our buddies over at the Commish, they're from our hometown. They're a nice podcast. I checked them out as well. And they got our feet wet in it. We went on their podcast, and then 3 days later, we're like, hey, let's start our own podcast too, because we like to talk to ourselves. We like to talk to other people. So maybe we'll get some people to listen, and it's just taken off from there. And we've actually probably tripled the numbers I expected per episode so far, but we've gotten great feedback and we love it.
Yeah, I noticed our feedback started taking off whenever we started doing the Sunday morning lineup questions. I noticed that like our viewership and our clicks and everything started going up once we started actually like helping people. And then again, we did tell some people, start Sammy Watkins week 2 and stuff like that. We had some bad calls like everybody does. But after that, we kind of just started shooting up and, we're just getting out there and talking with a bunch of these other fantasy podcasts, and we're actually doing something pretty cool. You guys are going to be a part of it with us, with the whole fantasy football league full of fantasy football podcasts. And so I can't wait for that to happen. That sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun this year. A lot of bragging rights. We definitely have to get like a championship trophy or something for us.
Well, yeah, there's rings you can buy too, and you can customize them pretty cheap. I was thinking about starting a podcast league too and just buying the ring for everybody every year because they're not too expensive. They're not gold or diamonds, but could be something to play for and some bragging rights online.
Yeah, exactly. So look for that coming this season. If we have sports, it's looking more and more like we're actually going to get sports. So I'm super excited. Probably not baseball because they can't figure out how to do the billions and billions of dollars that they generate every year. They can't divide that up. But football is definitely going to be back. So fantasy is going to be back. So that's what we're here for today. Let's get into these tight end rankings. So pretty much you want a tight end that's reliable. Streaming options kind of suck because they're just streamer options. So there's really the holy trinity and then a nice little group of guys right underneath. And then, after that, it kind of fades off. So my number 1 overall tight end so far right now, I'm going to say it's going to be Travis Kelce. I like everything that happens in Kansas City. He is definitely the number 1 guy, regardless of what anybody thinks. Yes, Tyreek Hill is awesome, but Patty Mahomes loves Kelce. Kelce is a beast. He's a target monster as well, so he's going to end up this year as a number 1 tight end for me.
And I agree. I have Kelsey at 1, too. The thing with Kelsey is they draw up plays for him in the red zone. So they put him in motion, giving him shovel passes. They handed him the ball last year, I believe. He's a big body guy, athletic. And the thing with him is, a lot of people are like, well, he's not the number one option, so how can he be the number one? Because Kittle's, you can argue saying he's the number one option in San Fran. Mm-hmm. But the thing with him is Tyreek Hill can touch the ball one time, run it 80 yards, score a touchdown, outscore Kelsey, but Kelsey still put up 25 PPR points because he caught 2 touchdowns with 6 catches for 50 yards. They utilize him a lot more in the red zone because their wide receivers are on the speedy side. But, yeah, I agree. I have Kelsey at 1.
Yeah, and then this next guy is going to get paid. It does seem like he's going to play this year without a extension on his contract, but I think he's going to set the market. George Kittle is going to get somewhere between 15 and 18 mil a year because he's just such a weapon. He blocks, he catches, he does it all for this team. He can run the ball. I think they've handed it off to him a couple times, like Kelsey last year. And he'll throw 5 Saints on the ground and get tackled by his face mask. So Kittle's, it's going to be, I had a hard time with this one. I just thought, slight regression on Jimmy G's part. So I gave the edge to Kelsey, but Kittle is definitely going to be a monster again this year.
Yep, I have Kittle there as well. And that you did touch on his blocking ability. He's arguably the most complete tight end in football, in my opinion. He is a fantastic blocker. You watch Romo break him down on Monday Night Football and in the playoff games, he's legitimately throwing guys around on the field. And he did catch the same amount of touchdown passes as Kelsey last year in 2 less games, 12 less catches, around 170 less yards. So if you put it as a 16 game sample size for both of them, they're right neck and neck as fantasy points go. But because of the level of quarterback Mahomes is compared to Jimmy G fantasy-wise, I have to give the edge to Kelsey, but then Kittle's right there.
Yeah, so far we're 2 for 2 on this. It's kind of like we planned it, but guess what, guys? We didn't. So 3 is just another target monster, and I feel like they really didn't do much to shore up the receiver position on this team. Zach Ertz in Philly, I have him at 3. I hate that Goddard gets so much love in the offense and kind of takes away from him, but I still feel like receiver-wise, they didn't do enough to take anything away from Ertz, especially down in that red zone area.
This is where we're going to start to disagree.
Sweet.
I actually have Mark Andrews at 3. In my opinion, he's the number one option in the passing game over in Baltimore. He led the tight end position with 10 touchdowns last year, 850 yards. I'm not exactly as worried about a second tight end in Baltimore as I am with Goddard, who is going to have his name on this list eventually with probably both of us as well. I put Andrews at 3 here, given the edge to him because he's the number one tight end option, and there's no real number 2 in Baltimore.
That's really since they got rid of Hurst.
Yes, yeah. And then it's just Nick Boyle is the only one left, and he isn't exactly the receiving option Dallas Goedert is.
Yeah, he's more of their blocking tight end anyway.
And especially in a PPR format, I know Ertz gets a lot more targets, but Lamar was so efficient last year in the short passing game, getting the ball out, the read option, stuff like that, getting the ball out quick. And Andrews pretty much never left the field.
Yeah, and that PPR aspect is why I gave Ertz the nod over Andrews, but I have Andrews at 4 for all the same reasons that you stated. I mean, the fact that they got rid of Hurst just shows that they're even more sold on him. I do like the fact that they said that they're going to try to get Lamar to throw the ball more and run less, but until I kind of see that play out, talk is cheap, so we'll see how it develops throughout the season, but I still have Andrews at 4.
Yeah, and I have Ertz at 4. So we flip-flopped him here, 3 and 4. Ertz is an unbelievable player. It's just the real big thing with that offense is that, one, you have to worry about Goddard, especially in the red zone, who came away with another 5 touchdowns and was only a couple hundred yards away from him. And is Wentz finally going to be healthy for an entire season?
He played all season last year. He didn't get hurt till the playoffs last year. People still fault him for getting speared and a concussion. I mean, and the thing is with Wentz is everything with him is like a freak injury, like diving for the end zone and your leg gets whipped, back and forth, and then you tear your ACL. I forget what he did 2 years ago. And then last year he gets smacked in the back of the head by Clowney. And I think if anybody gets smacked in the head by Clowney, you're going to get a concussion. So,
yeah.
So this is probably where we're going to start to differ with our rankings. 5, it's a little bit of a homer pick for me. He's never finished a year, but I think this is the year that he finishes it. It's a contract year for him. He's playing on franchise tag. Hunter Henry, I like that mid-range game with Tyrod. He's a beast in the red zone. Tyrod's never had the weapons he's had this year, so I feel like the Chargers offense is still in good hands because we're not going to have 18 turnovers with Philip Rivers. Tyrod takes care of the ball a little bit better. So I still like Hunter Henry. I still think he's a top 5 tight end. My worry with him is finishing the year healthy, but right now I think he'll do that, especially in the contract year. So who do you have to round out your top 5?
I'm going to disagree with you here, and I don't have Henry at 5 or 6, so he's a little bit farther down for me. I have Darren Waller. In a PPR league, he came down with 90 catches, 1,150 yards. He only had 3 touchdowns, and they came in a 2-week span. But, in the fantasy playoffs last year, he was averaging 8 catches a game. And to start the season, he was averaging 9. So he began the season very hot. And at the end of the season, he got just as hot, especially in the fantasy playoffs where I had him in every league because I picked him up week 1 everywhere I could. The only thing with Darren Waller is when Hunter Renfro's role got larger on that offense, his production went down. And then when Renfro got hurt is when Waller started taking over, because it was pretty much one of them was running that underneath route. And there was quite a few games where he broke a 40, 50-yard run when he caught the ball 5 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. But, 90 catches, 1,100 yards last year. He was very productive.
Yeah, that guy's pretty good. I have him a little bit lower on my list, and it's just because of the 17,000 receivers that they drafted this year. I think they went all 7 rounds with that receiver, which is the first time that's ever happened, and it's the first time at all. I'm just kidding, but I'm not sure where his role is going to be with all of the additions that they had, so I had him a little bit lower. But at 6, I have Austin Hooper. I do like Stefanski's offense for tight ends. If you look a couple years ago at Kyle, the touchdown Rudolph, he was legit from a fantasy standpoint. And I think they're going to use Hooper in that same sense. I don't think he's going to get a lot of work between the 20s. I think that's going to be more Juice and Odell, but I still think in the red zone he's going to be a big monster, and that's where most of his production for the year is going to come from.
Yeah, and with Hooper, I don't have him exactly as high either. The thing with him is I'm a little nervous that Njoku isn't just going to disappear, and he's going to be the clear number 1. Njoku is going to get looks. He's not going to just sit on the bench all year. He's not going to be a decoy. At 6, I actually have Evan Engram. When healthy, he is a wide receiver playing tight end. Jimmy Graham, when he was with the Saints, with the ability to go up and get the ball, and he's a lot more dynamic with the ball in his hands. Last year he took off and was beating safeties and corners down. They couldn't catch up with him. If he can stay healthy, there's nothing really keeping him away from being the number 1 option. Slayton is good, especially in a dynasty format because he's so young with Daniel Jones. I see a lot of production coming from Engram, and I have him at 6 here.
Yeah, I didn't agree with you as much, but I have him at 7. The injury concerns does mess with it a little bit, but when he's on the field, he's electric. And like you said, he can be that number 1 guy with Daniel Jones, especially if they can kind of keep those cores together. Who knows where he is in 2 to 3 years. Maybe he's top of those lists if he can stay healthy. But yeah, I have him at 7.
Yeah, in 8 games last year, and 2 of them he left early, but let's just, it's a half a season. If you give him a per diem rate of 8 with the 16 games, he ends up with the same amount of catches as Zach Ertz, more yards, and the same amount of touchdowns. When healthy, he absolutely is in this conversation of a top 5 guy. But the issue is his health and his ankle.
And you're probably going to get a steal on him because people are going to pass him up because of that injury worry, especially at the tight end position. You kind of want a guy that you can depend on, because if you're stuck streaming, you're kind of in a bad spot with tight ends if you're stuck streaming. So at 8, this is where I have Hayden Hurst in Atlanta. I think he can turn into that Austin Hooper role. I don't think it's going to be as prevalent because we didn't really get to see his athleticism showcased in Baltimore because Mark Andrews just came out of nowhere. But I still think he can slide into that role. He's not going to have the relationship that Matty Ice had with Austin Hooper, but he's still a big body. He's still going to be used in the same sort of ways, especially down in the red zone. So I have him here at 8.
At 8, I have Tyler Higbee. I'm probably a little bit higher on him than most are, and there's no bias because again, I'm a New England Patriots fan, so I don't want there to be any biases at all. But he did carry me in one of my leagues towards the end of the season. I just rode the hot hand because I was streaming for a while. I picked him up, and then he just brought me all the way to the finish line. But I mean, Higbee he had the 6th most catches, 69 catches, 734 yards. He had over 15 fantasy points in like 6 games. Just the beginning of the season, he didn't exactly have the fantasy outburst. It was all mid to late season. And, at 7, I go Higbee here. But I go Higbee, and then at 8, I have Hunter Henry. So I'll just jump into 8. I have Hunter Henry at 8. My concern with him, the reason I have him a little bit lower than you do, which is only 2 spots, but I'm just concerned with the quarterback playing San Diego.
San Diego. It's all good. They're still San Diego.
What's going for him is if Tyrod plays the entire season, because remember when Tyrod was in Buffalo, when he was a Pro Bowler in Buffalo, everybody forgets he was a Pro Bowl quarterback for a season. Charles Clay had a very good season. He does like to hit his tight ends in the middle of the field. My concern is Henry's health, and if Herbert takes over, I see it being a lot of Keenan Allen and extreme amount of Austin Eckler.
Yes.
Because in college, Justin Herbert was like the check down king. He read. He didn't want to make a bad decision later in his college career, and he checked down quite a bit. And I feel like that's going to happen, especially in his rookie season. It's going to be a lot of Austin Eckler out of the backfield because they did design a lot of plays for him last year. But I have Hunter Henry here.
I'm banking on, because I follow the Chargers pretty closely because they are my team. So we'll see if they're just like smokescreen here. But they are saying it is Tyrod's job and that they're going to develop Herbert just a little bit more because he's still a little raw. So that's what I'm banking on. But yeah, if he comes in, I feel like everybody's going to take a step back, especially Austin Eckler. I don't think he'll finish as high as I think he will with Tyrod, but we'll go ahead and jump in at 9. This is where I have Gesicki. I really feel like in Miami, there's a lot of targets to go around, but nobody to really take advantage of it. Towards the end of the season, Gesicki did start to come on a little bit. We don't know Devontae Parker. He says he's a top receiver against Mike Thomas, but doesn't really seem like it. His injury history, Preston Williams is coming back from injury, so we don't know how he's going to do. But I like Gesicki, big body guy, especially down there in the red zone. And I think he's pretty much startable if he has Fitzpatrick or if he has Tua. So I have him at 9 because somebody out in Miami needs to catch the ball.
Yeah, I mean, he is a big body guy, 6'6", 250, and he shows he's athletic and a good red zone threat, especially the end of the year. I don't have him here. I have Jared Cook at 9. I think they're going to utilize him quite a bit in the red zone and in the middle of the field. I know all the slants are going to Michael Thomas. He's going to draw a lot of coverage this year, and Sanders is going to get a lot of deep balls, and I think Cook's going to get a lot of that intermediate route and red zone looks. I think he's going to be very productive, and I have him at 9.
Can't complain with that. I do have him slightly lower, but he still is a tight end 1 for me. But at 10, I have Jack Doyle. And the only reason why I have Jack Doyle is because Philip Rivers loves tight ends. Jack Doyle is a pretty athletic guy. Rivers loves to throw to his tight ends, so 1 + 1 equals fantasy production for Jack Doyle. I went a little iffy on this, but I think that him and I forget who else they picked up. Was it
Burton.
Yeah, Burton. I felt like Jack Doyle is going to get most of the love rather than Burton. So I have Doyle here. I think he's going to benefit from kind of like how Luck loved Jack Doyle. So 10 Jack Doyle. He is my sleeper as well.
I am high on Doyle this year. I do think Burton takes a little bit of it if he can stay healthy. But I have Gesicki here. I love Mike Gesicki this year, especially with the court. Chan Gailey came in, and he has a high tight end production track history as an offensive coordinator, and when he's calling plays. So I think it's going to be a lot of Gesicki. I know a lot of people are high on Preston Williams, and they should be, because even though he was undrafted, it was mostly because of his off the field stuff. He is productive. I still don't know what Devontae Parker is as a wide receiver.
Nobody does.
Because he was a number 1 wide receiver for 8 games last year, and he was supposed to be a number 1 wide receiver for the last 3 years. So the book is still out on Devontae Parker, and this year he's going to have to play well in order to get paid. But I have Gesicki here at 10.
All right, so at 11, I have TJ Hawkinson. So before he got hurt, before his quarterback got hurt, he was touted as the next guy come in and kind of set the tight end position. He is a phenomenal pass catcher. He's super athletic. And before Stafford went down, he was on pace to throw for 5,000 yards. I think he's going to take over Marvin Jones as the second threat behind Golladay. I like the offense because they love to throw the ball. They haven't had a 1,000-yard rusher in – I don't know how long has it been since Barry Sanders was there?
Yeah, since Barry Sanders was
so they're going to throw the ball. You know that they love to air it out. In my thought process, he is legit. He's a phenomenal player. He's going to catch the ball. He's going to score touchdowns. Hopefully he can stay healthy, and hopefully his quarterback can stay healthy and he doesn't have, I don't know, whoever the heck.
Blau,
there you go. I was thinking, you see, you can't even remember the guys' names. So if all that stuff can happen, he'll finish as a tight end with one for me.
Yeah, I have Austin Hooper for the same reasons you mentioned before, but I'm just a little bit nervous about Njoku. I am high on Noah Fant, but I gave the edge to Hooper just because he's shown he can be productive, and I think this is going to be a better year for Baker. I think he's going to have better decision-making, better play calling around him. They did shore up the line. He's going to have Hunt for an entire season as well as Chubb. So 2 running backs, 2 tight ends, 2 good wide receivers, and an improved line with a talented defense.
What more can you ask for?
Yeah, I mean, but it's just I'm a little worried about Njoku, but I do have Hooper at 11.
All right, so to round out the top tight ends, so final TE1, this is where I have Jared Cook. I love the New Orleans offense. I'm still a little iffy about his role on the team because he does disappear for a game or two sometimes. So I'm a little iffy about that. And Mike Thomas does get so much love. And now you bring in Sanders, who's a little bit better Ted Ginn Jr., so they're gonna be able to stretch the field a little bit more with him more than they could with Ted Ginn. So all those things play in, but he's still in a prolific passing offense. He's still a really good player. So he's gonna be rounding out my tight end number ones.
Yeah, and here I mentioned him before. I have Noah Fant. I'm very high on Noah Fant. I see a lot of Evan Ingram's game in Noah Fant with his athleticism and his size and his ability to catch the ball in traffic. The only question mark with him is with Sutton and the wide receivers they drafted in the first 2 rounds. Is he going to be able to – and they also have 3 good running backs. There's only one football, but with his athleticism and I do feel that they're going to use Fant over the middle quite a bit this year.
All right, so we'll roll right into these TE2s. This is where I have Darren Waller at 13. I was bouncing back and forth between will he finish as a tight end 1 or will he finish as a tight end 2. The quarterback situation there is a little weird. We don't know if they're going to be a full battle or if maybe they start 0-3, 0-2 if they're going to bring in Mariota. If they bring in Mariota, I still like Waller because Mariota likes the tight ends a lot. Look at Delaney Walker in Tennessee when he was there. But with all the offensive additions that they've made, I'm not sure where everything's going to fall out just yet. So I'm still a little hesitant on that whole defense out there in Oakland. Oh, Vegas, right?
Yeah, Vegas. Yeah, I had him a little bit earlier. At tight end 13, I have Eric Ebron. With him and Big Ben in Pittsburgh, I think he's going to continue to produce as he has over the last few years. I have Eric Ebron here at 13. He is a very talented player. He's going to be the biggest target Ben has because all of his wide receivers are on the shorter side. Juju's about 6'6", but then you have like Deontay Johnson, James Washington. They're not big-bodied guys that you're going to be able to target in the red zone. I think Ebron's going to get quite a bit of red zone looks.
Yeah, I could see him taking that Heath Miller role, kind of how Big Ben liked back in the day. So at 14, this is where I had Tyler Higbee. I'm still iffy on Rams tight ends just because Goff seems to ignore them for most of the time. They did get rid of Cook, so that does free up some targets to go around, but I think the majority of those are going to go to Cooper Kupp. So I still like Higbee, but the Rams offense, their offense has been terrible since they went to the Super Bowl. Who knows if they're even going to keep Jared Goff for the next couple of years? Nobody really knows. So Higbee's kind of an enigma for me. Like I knew I wanted to put him on the list. I didn't know where to put him on the list just because the Rams don't use their tight ends very much, and they have two really good tight ends. Just baffles me.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is one of those instances because Gerald Everett could come out of training camp and be their tight end one, and because he was last year before he got hurt. But here I have Jonnu Smith. With Delaney Walker gone in Tennessee, I see him being very productive. It goes back all the way to, with Tannehill, all the way back to Jordan Cameron in Miami. He does like to target his tight ends, and he did start to pick it up towards the end of the year. And when it's not going deep to A.J. Brown or underneath to Adam Humphries, Jonnu Smith's going to be in the middle of the field there as well. Tight end is a difficult position to rank because this is more matchup based than anything after you get past the first four guys, because these rankings could be blown off because remember, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, you just started whoever played against Oakland because they didn't have a linebacker that could cover tight end.
And last year you played whoever was playing Arizona.
Exactly. So then that'll mess up the rankings altogether. But, based off of projections, I'm expecting Jonnu Smith to be that second tight end too.
Yeah, these way too early rankings are definitely hard to kind of go through. That's why I kind of take these with a grain of salt because Jordy Nelson a couple years ago when everybody was super high on him, the first preseason game tore his ACL. So, you can never know what actually happens, especially during training camps. Somebody can get hurt. 2 years ago on the first day of conditioning, Hunter Henry tore his ACL just running. So you never know what happens this early. With that being said, with all that pretenses, 15 for me is a one Rob Gronkowski or the White Tiger on The Masked Singer, your darling up there in Mass for a long, long time. I think his production is going to be from the 20 in. I don't see this guy running down the field very much because he was saying that his body hurts and that's why he quit. And now he just wants to have fun and score touchdowns. So we'll see. But I don't feel like it's going to be a big PPR year for him. It's going to be more 9 touchdowns with maybe 50 catches instead of 100 catches with 10 touchdowns. So I still like the connection him and Tom have. And he's just fun to watch because he spikes Steve Harvey's Lego head on the floor of the stage. So he's fun to watch.
Yeah, he's going to be very difficult to predict because if he's all in and he's going to play the same way he did 4 or 5 years ago, you can argue that he's going to be 4th or 5th on this list. Mm-hmm. But if his body hurts the way he says it does, and the fact that they have O.J. Howard and Cameron Brate, never mind the fact that they have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, he's very tough to register right now and where to put him. I have him a little bit lower. Again, I do love Gronk, and I will always have the ability to root for him no matter where he plays. But here I have T.J. Hawkinson at 15. For the same reasons you mentioned before, he's going to be that underneath guy with Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay catching all the bigger stuff. Amendola is back to play slot, but I think that it's going to be more Hawkinson in that H-back role in Detroit. I see them almost using him as like an Aaron Hernandez when Matt Patricia was in New England. I know he was a defensive coordinator, but you don't just disappear and not listen and not watch when they're on the field. I think it's going to be a productive year for Hawkinson. I was high on him last year. He just never really carved out that role that I expected. But, yeah, I have him there at 15.
Yeah, 16, this is where I have Ebron. I like the situation he's in. I just don't know which Ebron are we going to get. Are we going to get Detroit Ebron, or are we going to get first year in Indy Ebron, where he's catching 12 touchdowns? So his inconsistencies have me just a little bit worried, so that's why I have him at 16. I think with Big Ben at the helm, he can return to that first year he had in Indy when he had Andrew Luck thrown to him, scoring all those damn touchdowns and killing everybody's fantasy team that didn't have him. So I'm hoping more for that, but he's too inconsistent for me to rank any higher on this list.
Yeah, I had him at 13, so 13, 16 isn't too far off. He's in that mid to early mid tight end 2 rankings. I have Jack Doyle at 15. He's going to be productive. Burton is going to take a little bit of it away from him, but again, he's going to be the 1A over there easily, if not the clear number 1 at tight end, especially in the red zone. And you hit the nail on the head. Phillip Rivers does love his tight ends.
Oh, yeah. 117 touchdowns to one Antonio Gates, and then almost a seamless transition to Hunter Henry. He likes those big body guys. He loves his tight end, so he's definitely going to have a big year. At 17, I have an an oldie but a goodie in Mr. Greg Olson. I like him going to Seattle. They didn't really use Jimmy Graham very well when he was there, and he had some really good weeks, but he had some pretty terrible weeks there. So let's see if he can carve out a bigger role than Jimmy could. He's not going to look as stylish, not flying a seaplane to practice every day like Jimmy did, but I still like Greg Olson. I was very high on Greg Olson before he broke his foot. When he came back, I was high on him, and then he re-broke his foot, so he kind of pissed me off last year. But he's such a good player. He doesn't drop very many balls, and he's a pretty good red zone target. So it's going to be him and Metcalf, some bigger bodies, even though they run the ball way too damn much for my liking.
Yeah, I'm a lot lower on him because you still have Will Dissly, you still have Jacob Hollister. So I don't think either of those guys are going to just disappear. And Olsen definitely has lost a step, especially with the broken foot and injury issues he's had. Here I have Dallas Goedert, just because of his ability to catch the ball in the red zone. I think he's going to be productive. He definitely carved out a role. You can argue Ertz is the wideout and Goddard's the tight end here on this offense, just by the way they play and their roles. But I have Goddard here.
Yeah, so at 18, this is where I put Noah Fant. The additions they made with the 2 receivers they drafted, and the fact that they drafted the Missouri tight end, which Drew Lock loved in college, does hurt him a little bit. So coming into the season, he already has a better rapport with the backup tight end than he does with the starting tight end. So I'm not fond of that. But I still think his athleticism will keep him on the field. It's just I'm not so high on him because they did draft 2 more weapons. They added Melvin Gordon, who can catch the ball out of the backfield. And the fact that they brought in Drew Lock's buddy from college does hurt his ranking just a tad bit.
Yeah, and here is where I actually have Hayden Hurst. I think they're going to transition away in Atlanta, away from the tight end a little bit. It's going to be a bigger uptick in Calvin Ridley, and I see Hayden Hurst taking a big backseat to the wideouts here in Atlanta. But I have Hayden Hurst here.
All right, so at 19, this is where I have Goddard for all the same reasons why I'm just 2 slots down from you. They use the tight ends very well in Philly. They still didn't shore up the receiver position well enough for me to worry about targets getting taken away. And last year they had a stock boy playing receiver in week 17, so they were just all beat up. So he does have a good rapport with his tight ends more than he does his receivers. And with tight ends, for me, the rapport is a big step because they're usually that safety valve when stuff breaks down. Just throw it to Old Faithful. Jason Witten back in the day, 6-yard button hook made his life on. So especially when you get down into these lower tight end number 2s. So that's why I have Goddard 19, whereas you had him at 17?
Yeah, he's a later tight end too. In Dynasty, he's probably going to be ranked a little bit higher because of, you're not sure what's going to happen with Ertz and his age. But in redraft, we definitely have Goddard here. I have Ian Thomas from Carolina here. He's going to take over that tight end 1 spot in Carolina. He was very productive when Olsen was out last year, and I think that, especially toward the end of the season, I think he's going to carve out a role on that offense. I am high on him. It was between him and Gronk here, but I give the edge to him because he has his role carved out, and he was there last year. He doesn't have 4 other options to fight with.
Yeah, so we are now at number 20 on the list. 20, I have Blake Jarwin from Dallas. Dak Prescott throws the ball a lot. He's going to sign his franchise tag because they're not going to be able to get to that $45 million a year. Jeff Bezos money that he wants there. So it's asinine to me that he wants that much money, but whatever, we will keep going. So the opportunities for catching the ball, I don't like that they brought on CeeDee Lamb from Oklahoma, but still no Jason Witten anymore. He's now in Vegas dancing with the showgirls, so he's going to be able to step up to that true number 1 tight end for them. You're going to have Gallup going down the field. You're going to have Amari Cooper either down the field or in there's short range passes, 3-yard slants that he likes to take to the house and piss everybody off that's playing against him. And then we're not sure what CeeDee Lamb's position is going to be yet. I'm predicting he's going to be more down the field type of guy. He has the youth, so he's going to be able to edge out him a little bit more.
Yeah, he's definitely a lot more athletic than Jason Witten was last year.
God, he was so freaking slow running.
Oh, it was unbelievable. It was like watching somebody's father go out there and just step in for a couple plays. Like in The Longest Yard, when the coach puts his helmet on, takes his hat off, runs on the field, and catches the touchdown pass. But I have Gronk here at 20. This is based off of his relationship with Brady and that only. Obviously, he's a talented guy, but taking a year off, having to had 4 or 5 back surgeries, arm surgeries, shoulder surgeries, and 2 knee surgeries, I would understand why this guy says his body hurts. At his size and athleticism, I'm sure he's a step slower. He's probably not as strong because he leaned out a little bit over the last year or so. And, with O.J. Howard and Cameron Brate, they're actually close behind because I don't know which one to rank. Brate is an outstanding red zone threat, and OJ is just another freak of nature that nobody's been able to really give a role to. But I have Gronk at 20 here.
I don't think anybody leads the league more in touchdowns taken away from them than Cameron Brate does.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
He had, 3 in one game last year where there was flags that took him away?
Holding,
all of them were the same drive.
Yeah, poor guy. He had 17 touchdowns last year. All of them got taken.
And remember, 2 years ago, he led the NFL in touchdowns at the tight end position. He had 12. Mm-hmm. So he is a productive, talented tight end. Just because he's the third guy on that team doesn't mean anything. He could carve out a role and be the tight end 1 just because of availability and youth over Gronk.
Tom likes his tight ends. I mean, since Gronk has come in, you haven't really seen him throw the ball much anywhere else other than those tight ends, him and Aaron Hernandez. So it was weird last year not seeing tight ends running down the middle of the field for you guys. But, yeah, the tight end position for Brady has been pretty big this last couple of years.
Yeah, definitely.
So at 21, this is where I'm going to put Jonnu Smith. I feel like he's still developing as a player. Maybe next year I'll give him a little bit more credit. Tennessee does like to play action a lot, so it's going to be middle of the field or deep down the field to A.J. Brown. I just think A.J. Brown's going to take another step forward and continue to develop into eating up that target share from Tannehill. So I'm a little bit lower on him than you are, but I still like him, especially as a streaming option down the line, later on.
Yeah, and that's where we are now. We're at a streaming option with some upside, potentially carving out a role, because a lot of these guys are going to be on the younger side who haven't really, carved out a role on their offense yet. But at 21, I actually have Dawson Knox. I'm very, very high on him, especially if you're able to hold on to him in a dynasty format. Dawson Knox is a very talented player, and he's very, very efficient with the ball in his hands. He's a freight train with a lot of speed.
Makes amazing catches, too.
And he does, yeah. Even though he did have drop-itis last year, he dropped 10 passes last year. We just recorded an episode last night with a Bills reporter who we went into some real detail on Dawson Knox. He can block. He's not going to leave the field much in Buffalo, and I think he's going to get a lot of those quick passes from Allen, and I like his upside quite a bit.
Yeah, he's was one of those guys I wanted to put a little bit lower. I felt like some of these other guys deserved a little bit more spots. 22, I have Ian Thomas. 2 years ago, he was a good streaming option when Olsen went down. Last year, when Olsen went down, he kind of disappeared a little bit in games. So I think he's still developing and he's still kind of coming into his own. He's going to be an awesome streaming option, especially for Teddy Two Gloves, who doesn't like to push the ball down the field. He likes more of the intermediate to even behind the line passes. So I have him here. I'm not sold on him just yet.
Yeah, I had him at 19, so he's a streaming option. He's not going to be your starting tight end every week. At 22, I'm going to go Blake Jarwin. Before the addition of CeeDee Lamb, I would have put him in the 12 to 14 area.
Yeah, exactly.
But because now he's the 5th option on that offense because you have Zeke, you touched on the other options. Something has to happen in order to get him to be a starting tight end every week.
Yeah, so at 23, I was big on him last year before everything with injuries happened, but Chris Herndon, especially in New York, there's really nobody that's established just yet. They just lost Robbie Anderson, so there's really nobody out there other than Jamison Crowder that demands the ball, I guess you could say, for New York. But he was, a couple years ago when he was healthy for 4 games, he was extremely beneficial to your team. He's going to have opportunities because, name somebody outside Jamison Crowder that the Jets have. Exactly.
Yeah, well, being in the fantasy world and
The opportunity's there. So
yeah, but because we're more knowledgeable, the normal person won't be able to name anybody else. But Brashad Perriman played with Tampa last year. He was kind of hidden as their third, fourth wideout. It's just I'm a little with Herndon. I'm a little concerned with Ryan Griffin because everybody's been trying to talk me into Chris Herndon for 2 years now, and he just hasn't produced yet.
Injuries is
and his injuries
detrimental to him.
Here is where I have Irv Smith Jr. I think he's going to take over from Kyle Rudolph. The ball needs to go somewhere. I know Justin Jefferson came in, but we're not sure what he is yet. Just because you spend a first-round pick on somebody doesn't mean they're going to be productive. Look at guys like Corey Davis and different draft busts. You don't know what anybody's going to be. And I'm high on Justin Jefferson, but I think Irv Smith Jr. is going to carve out a small little role, and I think he's going to take over for Rudolph, and I have him here at 23.
So 24, I'm going to go opposite of you. And I still think just based off of the relationship he has with Cousins, Kyle Rudolph is going to be relevant for one more season. I still think, because even last year, everybody was talking about him, how he's going to take over for Rudolph, but it just didn't happen. So I still think Rudolph's going to be the guy. He's going to be a little bit bigger of the guy, especially because Diggs is gone. So now you just have Thielen and Rudolph, your rapport guys. Everybody else is still going to be developing it. So I still think he's going to be relevant more than your number 23.
Yeah, at 24, it's tough because I don't want to leave somebody off the list, but it really is between three guys for me. It's between Tyler Eifert in Jacksonville, Jimmy Graham in Chicago, and O.J. Howard in Tampa Bay. I'm going to give the nod to Tyler Eifert at 24 because him going to Jacksonville is going to open up. As long as he stay healthy, he could have some big games and be a good streaming option for you next year. Jimmy Graham worries me a little bit because they have 10 tight ends on their roster.
It's ridiculous how many tight ends
and they just spent a second-round pick on Cole Kmet.
Yeah, I think Jimmy, I think he's done. I think his better days are behind him. I mean, you had Aaron Rodgers last year, and you couldn't do much with it.
Yeah, it's just because he can't block. On run plays, you want to take him out. Mm-hmm. And then now you're one-dimensional ways on the field. Yeah, it's just like when you don't want to tip your hand. You don't want to go out there with a running back and say, all right, they're running the ball, and then they put the other running back in, and all right, they're throwing the ball. The ability to do more is the ability to do more, and that's why I'm definitely I have to give the upgrade to Tyler Eifert here.
All right, so I kind of already gave my sleeper in Jack Doyle. Who do you see as being the biggest sleeper at the tight end position?
Sleeper, pretty much going after the guys at the top 12. So you have to go between 12 and 24. For me, it's tough. I'm going to probably go Ian Thomas. I would probably go as somebody who could produce more than what we're expecting. We both have him at 19 and 22 respectively, but he could finish in between 10 and 12 next year just based off the fact that he's the tight end one over there. Another guy could be, a Dawson Knox or somebody like that. I'm high on Dawson Knox this year because I think in the red zone, everybody's going to key off on Stephon Diggs, and it's going to open up some lanes for Dawson Knox to get some touchdowns. But, yeah.
All righty, so that's going to end it for us with the tight ends. Those tight ends are generally the safety valve for those quarterbacks, generally the guys that you can always rely on to be there. You know what else you can always rely on? Manscaped. Let's hear about it real quick.
This is a message brought to you by the Foundation for a Perfect Package.
Why do I need Manscaped?
Why do I need Manscaped?
Why do I need Manscaped?
Because the only frill I want is the one up top.
Because being in a relationship is not an excuse to be lazy.
Because I like talking ball, not smelling like them.
Because deforestation is proven to prevent forest fires.
Manscaped is the only brand dedicated to below-the-waist grooming.
Manscaped's Crop Preserver guarantees that you smell your best all day long.
Manscaped Boxer Briefs are the most comfortable underwear on the market.
Manscaped's advanced skincare technology makes nicks a thing of the past.
Manscaped is the #1 in men's grooming. Subscribers get 2 free blade refills every 3 months. Get 20% off plus free shipping and handling with the promo code SLUMP at manscaped.com. That's the promo code SLUMP at manscaped.com. Get your lawnmower 3.0 today.
We are the Slumpbusters.
And we approve this message.
right, guys. Just like we said, use promo code SLUMP at manscaped.com. Get 20% off and free shipping. One thing we didn't mention is that thing has a 90-minute battery. So take your time down there. Do a little bit of touch-ups, maybe get some designs going on. Ask your partner what they like. Maybe get a landing strip, an arrow. Do something. You got 90 minutes to do it. So take your time. Make it look good. Your balls will thank you. Again, promo code SLUMP, 20% off and free shipping. So we ask everybody this. Any terrible manscaping stories over there in Mass?
No. No.
One of our guys cut his stuff all up when he was learning how to shave. So poor guy, poor Chris. But
he doesn't have to do that anymore as long as you use your promo code.
Exactly. Nick-free technology. So let's go ahead and get into those defensive guys. Now, it's extremely hard for defenses to repeat as the top defense. 2 years ago, we had Chicago. Last year, they weren't so. Last year, we had New England at the number one. I don't see them repeating. History won't, kind of plays into that. Also, they're not going to have Tom Brady leading on the other side, kind of eat clock. They're going to either have Stidham or Hoyer, whoever they have. So I feel like San Francisco's going to take that leap. They already have an elite defense. They didn't lose much on that defensive side. I think they're going to finish this year as the number one defense. I'm high on Bosa's because we have Joey. Nick Bosa is just as good. So I still think they're going to continue to dominate. And this year they're going to finish as number one.
In my opinion, they're going to be number two. I have Baltimore at one.
Okay.
They were very productive last year. They run the ball a lot, so the clock runs. So they're not on the field as many plays per game. And the addition of Calais Campbell to already stacked front seven. Marlon Humphreys is a tremendous talent out on the outside. Earl Thomas, they're loaded. I think they're going to be the number one ranked defense next year. They do have to play Kansas City, but that's one game. San Fran is loaded. But my sleeper pick to be who could potentially take over at number one is Buffalo. They really shored up their defense this year. They spent a lot of money on their defense. They already have Trey White. You're bringing in Josh Norman, EJ Gaines. They spent a second-round pick, maybe the steal of the second round, and A.J. Epineza, Quentin Jefferson, Mario Addison, A.J. Klein. They did spend a lot of money on that defense. And, again, they're going to run the ball too, which does take a lot of the load off and a lot less plays for the defense to give up more plays and more yards. And they have to play the Jets twice, who are a questionable offense. You never know what Ryan Fitzpatrick's going to be, and you play him twice a year. And now you don't play Tom Brady twice a year, and you're playing Jared Stidham or Brian Hoyer. So that's 6 games where they could be over 10 fantasy points, and you could talk anybody into thinking that.
Yeah, I have Buffalo at my number 5. I have Baltimore at my 3. One team I feel like is going to surprise people, and I can feel it like as a sleeper that can be that number one team is Tampa Bay. So they started the year at the 30th ranked defense. They ended at the 5, so those guys started to learn that defense. And now they're not going to have to fight against 38 turnovers from their quarterback. They're not going to end a drive, maybe go a 5-minute drive or whatever, hit a punt, and then their quarterback throws an interception or fumbles the ball the next play, and they got to go right back out there. So I could see
field, yeah,
exactly. I could see them continuing to grow. I could easily see them in the top 5. I currently have them at 6, and they could easily be that number 1 because they're not having to battle the 38 turnovers from their quarterback. So
yeah, they're going to be a top 5 defense in my opinion. Shaq Barrett is a monster on the outside. They don't have the best corners. Carlton Davis is probably their best corner. They just got Antoine Winfield Jr. to play safety for them. They do have a very, very good front 7. And then having Tom Brady is going to help them because he's going to manage the clock. He's going to manage the game better. And they're going to be on the field less and in better situations. So instead of trying for the long ball on 3rd and 10, he may get 8 yards and play the field position game and help that defense out and be able to pin them inside the 10 or inside the 20 rather than Jameis chucking it up and getting a pick. And now you're already inside the 50. So I have Tampa inside the 5 as well.
Yeah, some other teams to look at. You still have New England. They really didn't lose anything on that defensive side. You still have Belichick running that defense. So New England's still going to be a pretty stout defense. Minnesota's still pretty good. You have the Rams, Kansas City, who developed towards the end of the year. At the beginning of the year, they were god awful. A little bit of a homer pick. The Chargers, they kind of shored up the linebacker position, which was terrible last year. They picked up Kenneth Murray. They also picked up Chris Harris Jr. from the Broncos. So now they have a corner to play opposite of Derwin James and Casey Hayward. You also get Nasir Adderley back from injury. That defense is starting to look good. Some other defenses that I would try to avoid. Green Bay, they really didn't do much on the defensive side. Outside of their sack numbers last year, which were pretty decent, gave up a lot of points. Now you're having to play some decent teams in the North. Chicago's defense, I feel like, is still going to slide down just because their offense isn't all that good. So they're going to be out on the field quite a bit more. And that's just kind of a couple of defenses that I kind of would stay away from. How about you?
For me, a team I'm actually very high on, a lot of people may be a little bit lower on. I think Philly is going to have a very improved defense. They're going to be in that top 8 probably. I am high on them as well. Teams I'm low on, again, I agree with you on the Chargers as well. I think they're going to have a much improved defense. The Vikings are questionable. They're going to be that probably in the defensive one. They're going to be in that 10 to 12 range. And then Green Bay is definitely going to drop quite a bit. They did put up some sack numbers last year, but Dallas worries me quite a bit. Their linebacking core for the last 3 or 4 years breaks down by week 8, and then you can argue that's when their defense their schedule gets a little bit tougher. I think that's when they start playing the Derrick Henrys of the world, and last thing you want is a broken down linebacking core when Derrick Henry rolls onto the field, because that's just a nightmare. Jacksonville is arguably the worst run defense in football, and they just lost Calais Campbell. And then the Colts are improving a little bit, but they're still going to be towards the middle end of the pack. And then I'm actually a lot lower on New England than you are. Losing Kyle Van Noy is going to be huge. Losing Landon Roberts is going to be a little bit bigger than people expect because he's that next guy that was going to fill that role. And then Jamie Collins was the reason that defense was where they were last year, in my opinion. And then Duron Harmon left. So you lost 3 of your 4 best linebackers. All you really have left there is Hightower, and then 2 rookies that they drafted in the 3rd round, and Uchi, and I think it's Simons is the other guy that they drafted. And then you still have Gilmore, and then McCourty twins, but they're not exactly great against the run. Last year they were just very speedy, and they just had a very weak first 8 games of the season. I'm a lot lower on them. I have them in that 10 to 12 range.
Okay. So that's really it for the defense. Defenses, unless you get that number 1 defense, New England last year, that they were putting up receiver numbers the first couple games, or first 8 weeks of the season. It's pretty much just a streaming and a matchup option for them. So before we get into the kickers, I just want to put out a couple of things. With the times we're going through right now, unprecedented quarantine, and now you have all of the protests and all of the fighting going on politically and against human rights and everything. It is a weird time to live through. So if your mental health isn't all there, that's all right. But if you need somebody to talk to, reach out to family, reach out to friends, even reach out to strangers. There is help available. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 1-800-273-8255. So just reach out for help. Suicide is a tough subject, especially for families that had to go through it. Just try to get help. I know mental health is a big thing nowadays. We're starting to dive into it a little bit more. There's still some faults with it, with coverage and with treatment. So just reach out, get help. It's going to be extremely hard to reach out, but if you do it, you might just save your life. Or if you know somebody that's struggling, reach out to them as well. So I just wanted to say a couple of things before we moved on. So I'll get off of my harp, and then we'll get into a pretty fun conversation now, because I am pro kicker and you are anti-kicker. So
yeah.
Let's go. So pretty much for kickers, it's a sore subject for a lot of people. You've either lost your league because your kicker missed the game or missed the last field goal of the game, or because their kicker made the game-winning field goal or something like that. I know I beat my brother-in-law 2 years ago in our work league because Bill Belichick decided to run for it on 4th down and get the first down instead of kicking a field goal. So he hates Bill Belichick, and I love Bill Belichick for that. So kickers, generally you want to get a good kicker on a prolific offense, or maybe somebody like Josh Lambo, who's been one of the more accurate kickers in fantasy or in the league. Even though he plays on Jacksonville, he's still one of the most accurate kickers in the league right now. So you want to take kickers out. I say keep them in. Why do you say take them out?
I'm not a fan of the position in fantasy. It's so frustrating as a fantasy owner to go through the ups and downs of a fantasy kicker. I mean, if you get like a Justin Tucker, then you're just keeping him all year long. He's your kicker no matter what, because you drafted him like the 8th or 9th round most likely. But I've never drafted a kicker up before my 3rd to last pick. And I always end up streaming somebody. And I lose probably 1 or 2 games a year combined in all my leagues because I don't pay attention to kickers as much. I mean, yeah, you can go off the rankings, but it's like you may have a kicker who is in a very juicy matchup, but because the game, it was windy or it was raining, or it's very frustrating. I lost a game once because all of a sudden it ended up being 18-mile-an-hour winds on a Monday night, and both teams decided that neither one were going to kick, and every other kicker was locked in except for mine, and I ended up with 1 point because he hit the PAT off the upright and it went in. But the leagues where kickers go negative, it's very frustrating, and there's not much skill that, in my opinion, that goes into selecting a kicker every week. It's more luck than anything.
No, it is definitely skill. You got to pay attention to weather. You got to look at all of the Doppler. You got to make sure the holder is not a new person. You got to make sure the snapper is not a new person. So I snapped in high school. I punted in high school. The only thing I never did was kick an extra point. I did kickoff. So I am pro 4th down army. I've even gone as far as saying, hell, let's just add punters into fantasy football because they're part of the game. You can do that, tally up, net yardages if you
inside the
20, exactly. So I know there's people out there that hate kickers and think kickers aren't football players, but damn it, they're football players. They're staking around. So
it is interesting because there was an article that came out last year where they were talking about potentially adding in a clutch factor point system for kickers, which is interesting because if a kicker kicks a field goal inside of 2 minutes or in the 4th quarter, they get an extra point compared to a kick in the 1st quarter. But, I'm sitting there watching games and I'm like, oh, it's only a 39-yard field goal. I get 3 points instead of 4. And it's just so frustrating. I get very frustrated with it. And I prefer a league without it, because I like to really dig in on players and their matchups, and kickers just add a lot more homework for me.
So what would you do then if somebody wanted to implement so everybody else gets, the fractions of a point? So what if a 39-yard field goal is now a 3.9 points instead of 3?
I would be for that. That would make me feel a lot better.
Because then he can make 2 35-yarders, and instead of having 6 points, you now have 7.
I like that a lot better. I've actually physically left leagues at the end of seasons because they didn't have fractional points for players. So something with usual, like standard ESPN leagues, every 10 yards is 1 point.
Mm-hmm.
If my guy ends up with 79 yards and only gets 7 points, I want to throw my remote through my television. I want my 7.9 points. And I think that because kickers are people too, if you're going to have kickers in your league, I may implement that in all of my leagues this year. I've never thought about it. I'm curious if that stat is even there on Yahoo and Sleeper and ESPN. I'm going to look into it, because if that's the case, then it's been implemented everywhere.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's on Yahoo because I'm a commissioner in one of my leagues, and I haven't seen that ability to. But Sleeper, it'd be fun for our fantasy league to implement kickers getting fraction of points, because then it really ups the kickers. You're hitting a 59-yarder or something like that. You get that extra 0.9. So that is going to be it for us. Why don't you go ahead and do a shameless plug? Where can we find you? Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. Go ahead and do that shameless plug for us.
Yeah, so we're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, the whole nine. We're the Wire FFB, as in boy fantasy football. We follow back as much as we can. We love conversing with people. People ask us questions. When the season starts, we're going to be doing a lot of waiver wire questions and going live hours before kickoff so that people can ask us their starts and sits and different things like that. We try to answer everybody every single time they reach out. And our podcast is on all major streaming sites, Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, Breaker, all of those apps and services. We're on all of them. So, yeah.
Alrighty, guys. So if you're listening to this, you already know where to find us. All major streaming platforms. We are also Twitter, Slumpbuster Pod, and Slumpbuster FFB, on Instagram at Slumpbuster Podcast. And check out the website, theslumpbuster.com. That's going to be it for us. So now all of our rankings are done, guys. So now we're going to go ahead and get into the mock drafts for you guys. Probably do those bi-weekly so I can sit down and look at 144 players, because that's going to be a lot of work on my end, but we got you guys. This season's going to be fun. Look out for all the content coming, and go ahead and check out our friends now at The Wire. Hopefully we can have you guys back on either during the season or even go on your guys' show. So thanks for coming over. We're going to go ahead and head out, guys. Thanks.